and Lynn University numerous times. We truly appreciate Dr. Watson for his generosity in sharing his political expertise with the people of Palm Beach County. And with further ado, I give you Dr. Robert Watson.
Everybody hear me okay? Good, I'm honored to be here. Let me just congratulate Miriam, Joan, and all the organizers, Terry, and everybody for all the selfless and difficult work that you're all doing. I appreciate it. And Gannon, I'm honored to be here, selected along with you. Thank you for your years of service. PBSO, I'm truly honored. Talk about selfless service. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you. Also, let me acknowledge the fire and rescues here today. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and thank you for all that you do as well. Are you all like me? As soon as you pulled up in the parking lot, you saw all those bumper stickers, you just kind of exhaled, and I felt I'm at home, right? In these days of fact-free politics, fact-optional news, and a complete erosion of civility and decency, it's good to be together with this group of Democrats. Group hug, everybody. Thank you. Before I forget, let me also invite all of you to Lynn University. This year, talk about poetic with this election. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. And wouldn't it be poetic, everybody, in November? And we're going to kick off a year-long series of festivities at the university on January 30th at noon. You're all invited. It's open to the public. Former Congresswoman and presidential candidate Pat Schroeder is coming to talk about 100 years of the women's movement, and she'll take a look at this election. So that's January 30th at noon. You're all invited. Okay? I have three things I'd like to say today. I want to start by talking a little bit about impeachment. In particular, the White House, the Republican Party, Fox News, and the usual mouthpieces have been maintaining several points about impeachment. Number one, you've been hearing that the framers never really considered impeachment. They didn't discuss it in 1787 at the Constitutional Convention. Number two, impeachment would be barely a last-ditch nuclear option, so they didn't intend it to really be used. The third talking point, they say, is the framers never really defined high crimes and misdemeanors. And the fourth point that they're making is this is not a criminal act, therefore impeachment is not a political process, and this is a sham. I'm here to say those are lies, 180 degrees wrong on every one of those issues. The framers debated impeachment early on, vigorous, robust debate. They intended impeachment to be used regularly. In fact, I've written and said that if the framers came back today, I believe they'd be shocked that we haven't impeached more people. Remember, the number one issue during that hot, humid summer in Philadelphia that changed the world, sad to say, even more pressing to them than slavery, the number one issue that summer was what happens if a corrupt dictator becomes president. That was their main concern. Therefore, they created the Electoral College, which none of them liked. That way, the public wouldn't be duped by a corrupt dictator, and they, the elites, would pick the president. And secondly, they created impeachment, and they wanted it to be a go-to regular part of our system of checks and balances. So they intended for that. Did they define high crimes and misdemeanors? Yeah, crystal clear. A lot of them wrote about it. Hamilton wrote about it at length in Federalist 65. So from Alan Dershowitz down, when you hear people on the news saying they never defined it, they never discussed it, they did. They did. And impeachment is a political process, not a criminal process. So let's take a quick look at it. At the beginning of the convention, listen up, everybody. We good? We good in the back? It's like my freshman on campus. Now, if you start texting, homework. So, at the beginning of the summer, James Madison, James Wilson, Gouverneur Morris, and Ben Franklin, 4 of the leaders, said one of our priorities must be impeachment, what to do about a corrupt dictator. They borrowed it from English law, and they also borrowed it from a lot of the states. Several of the states and English law had a requirement for impeachment based on, quote unquote, maladministration, i.e. incompetence. That's the ground line for the baseline for impeachment, incompetence. So they started the debate early. Madison called impeachment indispensable. Ben Franklin said, the Constitution must provide for regular punishment of the executive when his conduct should deserve it, but also for his honorable acquittal when he should be unjustly accused. Elbridge Gerry added, a good magistrate has nothing to fear from impeachment, but a bad one ought to be kept in fear. So they all favored regular use of impeachment. Now, Edmund Randolph's, you remember back in school, the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan? You didn't know you were getting a history lecture, right? Edmund Randolph's Virginia plan included impeachment. He said the Supreme Court should impeach. William Patterson's New Jersey plan included impeachment. He said the governor should impeach. So all plans considered impeachment. The architect of impeachment as we know it is Alexander Hamilton. And I will refrain from rapping what Hamilton had to say about it. Hamilton designs impeachment as a 2-step process. Article 1, which is about the Congress, Section 2, Clause 5, says Step 1, the House serves as prosecutor, and the House needs just a simple majority, which we just saw. 1 vote past 50. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, Hamilton also wrote, the Senate serves as judge and jury. And the Senate needs a supermajority plus 1, that is 67 votes. That's the system we have. Now you're also hearing a lot of complaining coming out of the White House and Fox News that the way the Democrats are handling impeachment is unprecedented and against the Constitution. It's not. There have been 19 times in our history when we've gotten this far to take a vote to remove or to acquit. About half have been removed, about half have been acquitted. The way the Democrats are running it is completely in line with what has been done before. Now, all of the framers, every single one of them, agreed that treason and bribery are grounds for impeachment. But they couldn't decide what to do about maladministration, incompetence. So the framers did what they always did. They split roughly 50-50. Think about it. Half favored a strong executive, half a weak executive. Half wanted to repay our debts, the other half said no. You had the Federalists who were advocating for all that. They would be the Democrats today. That's George Washington, John Adams, Ben Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John J. Marshall. And then you had the obstructionists who favored the detention of slavery, weakening government, not paying our debts. They would be the Republicans today. Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Patrick Henry, so forth and so on. So they split half and half, and they had a debate about how do we define maladministration or a third criteria for impeachment. It was James Madison led one half of the debate, the Virginian, and George Mason, the other half of the debate. Madison argued that we need to have a high bar for impeachment. George Mason argued it should be a low bar. Madison said it has to be criminal behavior. George Mason said not criminal or even civil. It's a purely political matter. As the founders always did, they compromised. Here's the compromise. High crimes and misdemeanors. So they included both, and it was unanimous. So yes, a political misdemeanor is part of it. Then they sat about defining what constitutes a misdemeanor. Let me read for you what they said. Here's the examples that they all agreed on. Perjury, abuse of authority, dereliction of power, dereliction of duty, bribery, intimidation, refusing to obey a law, tax evasion, and the list goes on and on. This is what they agreed to. Then they offered specific definitions to get into the record of the Constitutional Convention. Ben Franklin said, who supported misdemeanors and a low political bar. Ben Franklin said the grounds for impeachment should be if the president renders himself obnoxious, end quote. James Madison, who favored high crimes, Madison then agreed with Franklin and said it should be both high criminal behavior or a political misdemeanor. Madison said if there's grounds for impeachment should be the incapacity, negligence, deceitfulness, or untrustworthiness of the high magistrate. Edmund Randolph said misbehavior. He favored a low bar of any misbehavior. Hamilton weighed in then, and Hamilton, to him, the key was that holding a public office is a high public trust. It's the highest responsibility. I think a lot of you that are not in office would agree with me as I look around at our congressional delegation around the country, the current composition of the House and Senate. It's embarrassing. But we here in Palm Beach County, from the local level all the way up to the congressional level, are blessed to have some really fine representatives and senators. So Hamilton said, any abuse of or violation of the public trust is grounds for impeachment. Then, as he always did, George Washington rarely entered into the public record. Washington was a lot like Dave and I. He was a very shy public speaker. Washington did what he always did. He calls over Hamilton, who was more his son than his aide. He whispers in Hamilton's ear, and at the close of the debate, Hamilton reminded everybody that the general said it should be political. He favored misdemeanors, and here's your grounds for impeachment. Conduct unbecoming a president. So everything we've seen has clearly been in line with this. My concern is the Fox White House Republican talking points are being parroted by the media, and they're not really fleshing out what the framers really said about the Constitution. One of my pet peeves is when Republicans cite the Constitution, thump themselves on the chest, and show us that they've never read the Constitution. Second point I want to make of three. I want to talk a little bit about the election. So what I did before coming here yesterday is I went through the Electoral College, the key states, and I looked at the leading polls, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, and so on, and I looked at the top analysts, Nate Silver, Larry Sabato, Charlie Cook, Congressional Quarterly, and I looked where they're putting all the states. They have D.C. and 44 of the states in either a blue or a red column, with 6 states outstanding. Now, to win the Electoral College, how many votes do we need? 270 out of a total of 538. We need a majority, 270. As of yesterday, according to the major polls and analysts, the Democrats have a reliable 246 votes. We are 24 votes away if everything holds and if turnout is normal. What we saw in 8 and 12, turnout was solid. In 2016, what? Turnout was flat. Turnout was flat. So 246, that means we are 24 votes away from winning. Florida has how many votes? 29. So if everything holds, and if we deliver Florida, Terry, a Democrat is in the White House. Now, the Republicans also have a path to 270, not as reliable as our path, but there's 203 reliable red votes at this moment, 203, which means they're 67 votes away. If everything stays the same and if turnout's normal, they're going to need to steal Florida, Pennsylvania, and 1 or 2 other states. So Florida could be the thing that delivers it for us, or the buttress against the Republicans building from 203 to get to 270. Here's another thing to look at. The very first public opinion poll was taken by George Gallup in 1933. From 1933 until today, no president has won re-election if they're below 46%. Trump's average approval over the 3 years he's been president, even if he says every day, I've got the highest approval rating in history, I'm way higher than Obama, 42.1%. That's his 3-year average, 42.1, according to the 5 leading polls. Which means if he wins, it would be the first president with low approval to win re-election. That's something we need to remember. He's unpopular across the nation. We need to build on that. Let us also remember that we have a Senate race across the nation. Right now, the composition of the Senate is 53-45-2. 53 Republicans, 45 Dems, 2 independents. Now, Mr. Sanders from Vermont and Mr. King from Maine both caucus with the Democrats. So it's 53-47, which means the magic number for us is 3. If we win 3 seats, it's 50-50. If we win the White House, then we have the tiebreaker. Remember, after Bill Clinton took office, NAFTA was a 50-50 tie, and Al Gore broke the tie in the Senate. So the magic number is 3 if we win the White House. If the Republicans win the White House, and Mr. Pence, or if Trump dumps him and picks Nikki Haley, whomever, they would have the tiebreaker. That way, the magic number would be 4 for us. Now, is this doable? Yes. Here's why it's doable. The Republicans are defending 23 Senate seats. We are defending 12. So they're defending almost twice as many seats. Several of them are in purple regions, so we should be able to pick up several seats. Those leading analysts that I mentioned earlier, in their predictions for the Senate, they believe the Dems will pick up 3 seats and the Senate will end up being 50-50. You could not cast a more perfect storm or script, right, everyone? This is suspenseful. So it could all come down to the presidency, which is looking tight as well. Why is the Senate important? 2 reasons. 1, treaties. Treaties. This president has withdrawn from just about every treaty and agreement the United States is in. He withdrew from the Paris Climate Accords. He withdrew from the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and left roughly a dozen Asian allies in the hemisphere of China. This president withdrew from the Iran nuclear agreement, and that worked out real well. This president shockingly withdrew from the Singapore agreement, which brought China, the US, and Asian powers together to keep a check on Kim Jong-un, the only person in the world who wanted to wreck the Singapore agreement was Kim Jong-un, and Trump did it for him. There is no other explanation. This president has withdrawn from international whaling protections. This president has withdrawn from parts of CITES, that's the Conference on International Trade of Endangered Species. This president has withdrawn from UNESCO, that's the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. This president has withdrawn from the UN Human Rights Council. We no longer participate with that. This president has withdrawn from almost every rendition and cooperative behavior with countries around the world. Do you all remember when Obama was president, a group of 12 sailors, the engine went kaput on their small skiff, they drifted into Iranian waters, does everybody remember that? And they were captured by the Iranian government. John Kerry, when we used to have a good Secretary of State, was on the phone within 5 minutes. The Iranians released those dozen American servicemen 15 hours later. We have withdrawn from all those rendition and cooperative agreements. God forbid another situation like that happens. We've withdrawn from almost all of it. We've even withdrawn from various international postal agreements where we work with the rest of the world on Maryland. There is no reason or rationale behind anything the president has done. Secondly, the second reason why the Senate's so important, you all know it, I hear all of you talk about it, the courts. The courts. Supreme Appellate District. My son is a sophomore at American University. He's been interning for Ted Deutsch. He's an intern at American. He wants to be a diplomat. So I had to spend several days in D.C. doing research and work not long ago. So I went up to see him, and he says, "Dad, check out the grades, straight A's, yada yada." So I said, "All right, buddy, where do you want to go for dinner? Do you want to go see a concert? What do you want to do? He says, you know, I've never been to the Kennedy Center. I said, okay, so we went to see a fellow. Everybody knows the Kennedy Center, right? It's amazing. We're sitting there, and you always see politicos. So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden there's a buzz across the room. So I told my son, get your phone, and I shove him out into the aisle. Because I said, someone important is coming. Then all the men walked in who were dressed like Will Smith and Men in Black, right? And all of a sudden, in walks RBG. Yes. The place exploded with love and respect. It was a 5-minute long standing O. I now know what it must have been like when the Beatles toured, right? And my son's going up and down the aisles going, RBG, RBG, get the room. And she walks in with me. Everybody in the place was screaming their head off except me. I collapsed back into my chair because I got to look at her. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Oh, there was a wrapper and bubble wrap. No kidding. I wanted to run up and protect her. The courts are fragile, everybody. Do you remember Merrick Garland? So in the Constitution, it says it not once, but twice. A key duty of the Senate is advise and consent. When a president appoints someone, cabinet or judges, the Senate must in a timely manner confirm or deny. For treaties, the Senate must in a timely manner ratify or deny. So in a timely manner, the Senate must do this. Merrick Garland was held up by Mitch McConnell for 8 months. That is a direct violation of the Constitution, not once, but twice. What we need to do as Democrats, yes, Michelle's right, when they go low, we go high, but we go hard. Here's what we need to do as Democrats. This is what my line was back then. What we should have done is McConnell was violating the Constitution. We should have called the Capitol Police and taken his ass out and handcuffed. You cannot violate the U.S. Constitution 8 months. And then Rubio, McConnell, Fox, they were all saying presidents never get appointments in their last year. So I went on the news and held up a list of Ronald Reagan's 33 appointments in his last year. It happened. We lost that one because they disrespected the Constitution, but we didn't go hard, everybody. They're doing it again. Let's learn our lesson. McConnell and the Republicans not only held up Merrick Garland, but several appellate and district court positions. Trump came into office and was able to fill multiple judiciary positions. You know, and I know, we've all read the reports. These are some of the youngest judges, the most radically far-right judges in American history, and according to the American Bar Association, a number of them are utterly and completely unqualified to be a judge. We got rolled. No more. We got to play hardball. The House of Representatives. Right now, we have the House, the magic number for the Republicans, 24. They need to pick up 24 seats. Can they do it? Probably not. Experts are predicting that because of so much gerrymandering around the country, only 24 seats are competitive. So the Republicans are going to have to go 24 for 24. They're going to have to run a perfect game plan. And unless if they hire Bill Belichick, I don't think that's going to happen. Right? Where's my Pats fans? Sarah, that's for you. Okay. So probably not pick up 24. However, all the experts are predicting that the Democrats, while we will hold the House, we're going to lose seats, is what they're predicting. Why? The Republicans are defending 5 swing seats in the House. We are defending 18. So we have over 3 times as many swing seats. Here's the second problem. It's poetic to say here on the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment that finally we have an historic first. Over 100 women serving in Congress. Where's Lois? Over 100 women serving in Congress. Now, here's a concern, everybody. The Republicans are targeting the women that were elected in 2018. Younger, more ethnic, progressive women all around the country. While Trump was being impeached, while the House was discussing impeachment, the Republican Party raised over $100 million. A lot of that money is going to House re-election efforts. You know where they're spending it? negative attack ads against the new women that were elected in Congress. They've already started running them. If they raise another 100 mil and then another 100 mil between now and November, they're going to be blitzing the airwaves in those districts of younger women with negative attack ads. Experts are predicting that the approval of those women is going to plummet into the toilet, and most of them could lose. So we need to not only focus on Florida, not only focus on the courts and the Senate, we've got to also focus on those new women, younger, more ethnic, more progressive women elected in the House. The last thing I'll say about the election, and I'm going to close with my third and final point. I have 5 big concerns going into it. Concern number 1, the Citizens United court case. Everybody knows it. Despicable. Citizens United versus the FEC from 2010. That's the Federal Elections Commission. I had written that I thought it would go down as one of the 3 worst Supreme Court decisions in history, in the company of Dred Scott, 1857, and Plessy v. Ferguson, 1896, as utterly reprehensible and indefensible. It allows for an unlimited amount of unregulated dark money, as you all know. Here's my concern. The majority of this blood money coming in under Citizens United is going to Republicans. Republicans could have record amounts of this money ready to go next November, so that's my first concern. My second concern, voter purges. Now, Susan, DeAndre, we have a lot of people here who are experts and can speak to this far more than I can. I just write about it. Many red states, as we all know, are planning purges this year. Now, there's nothing wrong with the purge if it's done right and done in a non-election year. Truly, if people leave, I taught at University of Hawaii, Stanford, Northern Arizona, Georgetown, Yale, Troy. I couldn't hold a job, basically. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to write books and go to museums and battlefields, so I traveled around the country speaking until I got married, and my wife said we're moving to Palm Beach County, and I've been here since then. So every time I left, I didn't notify the supervisor that I was moving. So it makes sense to keep the voting rolls accurate, but you know and I know the Republicans will purge this year and will do it in deceitful ways. Now, if your name isn't on the ballot, you can ask for an affidavit, a provisional ballot. The problem is what we've seen historically in purges is the lion's share of the names purged tend to be African American and Latino. And many times folks in disadvantaged communities don't know that they have the right to ask for that. We have a great ground game here in Palm Beach County and statewide. We need to make sure that in this state in particular, that if there's any of this nonsense, we are ready to go and people at the polls know that they can fill out an affidavit and vote. I wrote extensively on the 2000 election debacle. I didn't focus on the Supreme Court Bush-Gore decision or all the news. I went and interviewed people around the area. I interviewed African Americans who said they were in line to vote in Broward County. Polls are open 7 to 7. As Susan or DeAndre can tell you, as long as you're in line, you vote. But what did they do? They swore to me that people shut the door and they were in line and they didn't get to vote. And I had multiple people describe the exact same incident, the exact same people. I also had folks around Florida telling me that there were large, crew-cut, shaven, military-looking white men walking up to African Americans in their car and asking for their license plate number and writing it down. And I said to a couple of women, older women, what did you do? They said, I got in my car and left. I said, you have the right. They said, whoa, you don't have the right to tell that to me. You weren't alive in the 50s and 60s and now. I said I was in the 60s, but I appreciate and understand. So that's my concern. My third concern, the voter reforms that Republicans are pushing around the country. As you know, in many red states, they're closing voting offices in black communities. Therefore, folks are going to have to get a bus, take off work, travel to vote. They're also doing what? Disallowing college campuses from being polling sites. A college campus should always be a polling site. Everyone knows where it is, lots of parking, and we want young people to vote. Of course, by not allowing a college campus, you could have thousands, if not tens of thousands, of young Democratic voters not voting. We're seeing lots of other tricks. Shortening early voting to disadvantaged Democrats from 14 to 8 days. less machines happen here. Now, I agree with all the earlier speakers and Terry that we should vote by mail. It's easy, sit at home, vote. But there are a number of these reforms, and I just touched on 4 of them. The Republicans are pushing these all around the country. I have a friend who works on this stuff. He told me we could see as many as 3,000 potential voters, 3 million potential voters around the country not vote because of all the Republican tricks that they're putting in place. This is modern day Jim Crow, and we need to stand up for it, and we need to call it out. My 4th bit of concern is this. Even though Trump's at 42.1% overall, among Republicans, he's enormously popular. Since the 30s, we've been taking polls, Gallup, Roper, Harris, and now everybody today, asking Democrats, what do you think about Kennedy, LBJ, Carter, whatever, Clinton? Republicans, what do you think about Ford, Bush one? In the history, since the 30s, and we've been asking folks in their party what they think about their own nominee, Donald Trump is the single most beloved, popular president in that history. For example, the previous high, Republicans, 80% of self-identified Republicans loved Reagan, 80%. Trump is coming in at 90% among Republicans. That's double digits above Reagan. I never thought I'd live to say that. Double digits above Reagan. Here's the concern. In focus groups taken after elections, what we find is the problem with polls is they ask, are you voting for Hillary, yes or no? Are you voting for Trump, yes or no? It just measures yes or no. It doesn't measure the intensity of support. So a lot of Republicans, are you voting for Trump? Hell yes! But that's reported as a yes. A lot of Democrats, are you voting for Hillary? Yeah, may not show up. And what we found, whether it was George McGovern, Walter Mondale, Hubert Humphrey, Mike Dukakis, John Kerry, Al Gore, Hillary Clinton, we have a lot of smart, lifelong public servants, great candidates, and among Democrats, they were all and Democrats didn't show up. You can believe it, Republicans will show up this fall. Trump has made fun of disabled reporters, and damn near every Republican either laughed, stayed quiet, or applauded it. This president has made fun of Gold Star families who have lost loved ones in the service of this nation. And just about every Republican has either laughed, stayed quiet, or applauded it. This president has made fun of POWs. This president made fun of John McCain, an American hero, posthumously. This president has boasted about walking up to women he doesn't know and sticking his tongue in their mouth and grabbing them by the private parts. And every Republican in Congress has either laughed, stayed quiet, or applauded this kind of behavior. If not this, everybody, what? So if this is fine with Republicans, there's nothing that this train wreck, this loose cannon of a president, the disruptor in chief, there's nothing that he can do between now and November that's going to deter Republican votes. They are coming out. We had better not be in again. We had got to be behind our candidate. And Terry, Dave, everybody's right. It's get out the vote, get out the vote, get out the vote. The last thing I'm worried about is, and I've talked with probably all of you ad nauseum for the 20 years I've lived here, we seem to still be unable to market our message. The Republicans are taking health care away from people that can't afford it. Every other day or week, our men and women in uniform are risking their lives to save our schools when there's shootings. And they can't pass basic gun control reform. There's a tax on minimum wage, on unions, on women, on minorities, on immigrants. The Republicans are getting away with everything. If we can't take these lemons and turn it into lemonade, we've got to think of a way of emotionally connecting and making our message feel powerful. You know and I know, if something resonates in a deeply visceral way, you got it. We've got to take these messages and break it down and tell the stories of people who are being denied health care, who have lost loved ones because of gun violence, And anyone in uniform that has worked the streets knows we don't need cop-killing rounds, assault weapons, and magazines with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 rounds. We've got to get this kind of stuff under control and begin to market our message. In closing, in just 3 years, this president has absolutely disrupted the social and political fabric of this country. He's absolutely disrupted our sense of civility, decency, decorum, and neighborliness. He has undermined American relations around the world. 5 quick legacies to Trump going into the election. Legacy number 1, he is responsible for the loss of civility, decency, and decorum. Every major organization that tracks hate crimes by race, against gays, against women, anti-Semitic violence, the Anti-Defamation League, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Brennan Center, the Brandeis Center, AMCHA, A-M-C-H-A, the AMCHA Initiative, the FBI. Every organization that has tracked this, they've been tracking since the 60s. They documented what? A steady and positive and wonderful decline until 2016. And in 2016, the numbers doubled. An unprecedented spike in hate across this country. 2017, they double again. 2018, they double again. We haven't seen the 2019 numbers, but we all know where they're going to be. It coincided with his ride down the golden escalator. This president's legacy is destroying civility, membership in hate groups, neo-Nazi, KKK hate groups are at an all-time high. This is alarming. Legacy number 2, he has utterly abdicated U.S. leadership internationally. He has torn up shredded treaties, and in the vacuum, in the void of U.S. leadership, America should always be leaning forward internationally. Who has filled the void? China and Russia have filled the void. In the Middle East, Turkey is salivating and beginning to fill the void. We have abdicated our leadership. We have abandoned allies. We have emboldened enemies around the world. Number 3, not only abdicating our international leadership, but this man is an anti-institutionalist. He has attacked every major institution in this country. He's attacked the FBI, the CIA, the military, law enforcement, the intelligence community, the courts, the Justice Department. He is destroying American institutions that are necessary for stability and governance. Legacy number 4, the United States has become the laughingstock of the world. His mantra about, well, they laugh at us. Well, that's the only thing truthful this guy said in years. Anybody that travels knows every time we travel, that's all we hear. To the point where I'm beginning to apologize up front for what my president is doing. Legacy number 5, you can make an argument that the United States has become the single most destabilizing force to world peace. You can make that argument. You can make that argument. I'm going to close by simply saying the following. A story and a point. Those of you that know me know my hero is Harry Truman. I've been a professor for 30 years, and I think one of the reasons that I became an historian was because of Truman. He's my hero. Here's one way to look at it. In the vacuum of World War II, the world was facing not a pandemic. Truman called it a global pandemic of disease, hunger, and death. Think about it. After World War II, farm fields across the continent of Europe had been fallow. They weren't growing food. There was no food. Same with parts of North Africa, the Pacific, and Asia. Number 2, open sewage systems had been bombed for years and were festering. Open sewage systems. Running water wasn't working. Power wasn't working. There were no medicines, no vaccinations. The problem is the first winter after the war without heating oil and coal. You could see millions of people perish as a result of the post-war shortages. Now, how do we get stuff to Europe? The ships were sunk, the ports were blown out. The train tracks were destroyed, the trains were blown up. The bridges and roads were destroyed, the trucks were blown up. Very quietly, after World War II, with none of this, Harry Truman mobilized heaven and earth, and the United States reached out, and we rebuilt and saved Europe, parts of North Africa, the Pacific, and Asia, and delivered tons and tons of food, medicine, sugar, flour, coal, clothing, you name it, gauze, all around the world. And this president never took credit for it. Then 3 years later with the Marshall Plan, he does it again and gives that credit to Marshall. Truman also created the international order. Internationalism over isolationism. Multilateralism, working with our allies, over unilateralism. Statehood for Israel, bringing over 390,000 DPs from the refugee camps after the Holocaust into this country, everybody. NATO, the UN, working with the Organization of American States, the African Union, decolonization and funding the former colonies of the European power. Harry Truman, a failed farmer, the last president to lack a college degree, created the international order. My point is this: every single president after him followed the Truman Doctrine to the crossing of the T and the dotting of the I. Ike, Kennedy, LBJ, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, every single president except the current guy. He has torn up every aspect of the Truman Doctrine. He has said it's a joke, it's weak, and they're laughing at us. In the absence of the Truman Doctrine, this president is making foreign policy and national security policy knee-jerk by tweet in the middle of the night. We no longer have the processes. We no longer are respecting the institutions that have kept world peace, prevented World War III for over 7 decades. This is not okay. I'll close with this. This election is not about Donald Trump. This election is about the rule of law. This election is about the integrity of the United States Constitution. This election is about what kind of nation this is. This election is about us, about we the people. Thank you very much.
Dr. Watson. That was a great Dr. Robert Watson. All right, Terry Rizzo, come on up and take us home, Terry. We have one last thing to do. Terry Rizzo is going to congratulate the Board of Directors.
Democrats, would everybody please be seated? Democrats around the room. Everybody, hello. Democrats. One last thing before we leave. First of all, a rousing round of applause for Professor Robert Watson. If that doesn't motivate us, I don't know what's going to. Everything is at stake. Robert Watson, Dr. Watson, the advertising, please, just 1 second. Mark Siegel, 1 second, we need to have his attention. On behalf of everybody, we want to thank you for articulating absolutely everything that's at stake in this election. Everybody is fired up, and thanks to you for getting this book and educating these people on that. Thank you very, very much. And would everybody please be seated for just 1 second? Mark, please wait. Everybody, in my official capacity as chairwoman of the Palm Beach County Democratic Party and the Florida Democratic Party, it is my pleasure to administrate and congratulate the 2020 officers and directors of the Democratic Club of Greater Boynton. They've already taken their oaths of office. They've signed their loyalty oaths, but we would like to recognize them now for their work, for the wonderful work that they do and will be doing in this coming year. The directors, Karen Absa. Everybody who's being okay, please come up. We want to see you, Karen. Come on. Arnie Bernstein, Arnie Garvey. Arnie's over here on his way up. Larry Che, Lawrence Che, where are you, Larry? Come on up. Come up, please. Harriet Diamond. Harriet, are you here? Come on up. Don't be shy. Lisa Gentry and Michael Gentry. Both of you, they're right up here. And Phyllis Stansky-Sykes. Phyllis, come on up. These are Joan Haley. Joan? And the Executive Vice President, Harry Rauscher. Harry's here. Raise your hand. Harry? A round of applause for all of these people. And all of you, please shake hands. Now, and finally, congratulations and best wishes to our President, Joan Katz. Who has signed it as well? Joan, we place the leadership of the Democratic Club of Greater Boynton in your very, very capable hands. Bonnie Simon is proud of you. And thank you to Executive Vice President Emeritus, a special thank you to Flo Friedel. Flo Friedel for her years of service, and we're sorry that she could not be here today to be recognized. And also to our honorary directors, Senator Lloyd Berman, Representative Joe Casello, Commissioner Mary Lou Berger, and School Board Member Karen Grill. Would you all please stand and be recognized? Ladies and gentlemen, the executive group of the Democratic Club of Greater Boynton, please give them a round of